Ever get that feeling like when you're a kid digging in your backyard, you know, convinced you're going to find some, like, buried pirate treasure?
Oh, yeah.
Imagine that, but like on a grander scale.
Okay.
That's kind of what we're looking at today.
Well,
We've got excerpts from this article, all about royal treasures that were hidden beneath Vilnius Cathedral in Lithuania. It's like something straight out of a movie. So we're going to do a deep dive on this. And we're not just talking about what they found.
Right.
We're going to look into what it tells us about history and power and even the rituals back then.
I think that's what makes these discoveries so fascinating. You know, it's not just about the objects themselves. It's the stories they tell us about the past.
Yeah, for sure. So to set this up, these artifacts, they were hidden back in 1939, right as World War II was breaking out.
Right on the eve of the war, yeah. And they stayed hidden for decades.
And for like almost a century, people searched for these things.
Multiple searches turned up nothing. They were finally discovered using an endoscopic camera. Can you imagine that?
Oh my gosh.
The anticipation of finally seeing these treasures after all those years?
That must have been incredible.
Yeah.
You know, the article even mentions that they were wrapped in 1939 newspapers.
Talk about a time capsule.
Yeah.
I mean, finding these artifacts is one thing,
Right.
but to have them preserved like that, it really sets the stage for understanding the historical context.
Totally. So I think we should talk about what exactly they found.
Absolutely. So, we're not talking about some like small little trinkets here.
Yeah.
We're talking full royal regalia,
Okay.
crowns,
Oh, okay.
scepters, orbs, rings, coffin plaques, the whole 9 yards.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And who did these belong to?
Well, they belong to some pretty major figures in Lithuanian and Polish history.
Okay.
We're talking Alexander Jagiellon, who was the King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania, Elizabeth of Austria,
Okay.
and Barbara Radziwiłł. She was married to Sigismund II Augustus, who was another big-time ruler.
Wow. So we're talking like major figures here.
Oh, yeah. These weren't just names in a history book. These were people who shaped the course of European history.
So for those of us who maybe need a little bit of a refresher,
Mm-hmm.
can you give us some context about who these people were and what their reigns were like?
Sure. So let's start with Alexander Jagiellon. He was a key figure in the struggle against the Teutonic Knights.
The Teutonic Knights?
Yeah, they were like this powerful military order that had a lot of control in the region.
Interesting.
You can think of them as kind of a medieval knightly state, constantly vying for land and influence.
I see.
And Alexander's efforts to push back against their expansion were incredibly important in shaping the political landscape of Eastern Europe.
Okay, so his story has big implications.
Yeah, absolutely. He wasn't just ruling, he was fighting for the very survival of his realm.
Wow, that definitely adds another layer to it.
Yeah. And then you've got Barbara Radziwiłł.
You know, I've always been fascinated by powerful women in history.
Oh, she's definitely an interesting figure. Her story is like something out of a historical drama.
Tell me more.
Well, she was a noblewoman from a very powerful Lithuanian family,
Okay.
and her relationship with Sigismund II Augustus caused a lot of controversy.
Why is that?
Well, their marriage was seen as a threat to the established power structures at the time,
I see.
and her crown scepter and the other items, they would have been symbols of her elevated status.
So like a way of solidifying her place.
Yeah, exactly. It was a way of asserting her legitimacy in a world that was very much dominated by men.
Wow, that's really interesting. And it makes the discovery of her treasures even more significant, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So we have these incredibly powerful figures,
Mm.
and their treasures have been unearthed after all this time.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that I found really fascinating. The crowns, as magnificent as they are, they were never meant to be worn while they were alive.
That's right. They were specifically crafted for burial.
Okay, so what does that tell us about how these objects were viewed?
Well, I think it shows us that these weren't just symbols of earthly power.
Oh.
They were imbued with a much deeper significance.
Deeper how?
Well, they reflected beliefs about the afterlife
Oh.
and the idea that power could extend beyond the grave.
So it's like a statement of legacy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they were saying, we might be gone, but our authority, our power, it continues.
That's pretty powerful.
It is. It speaks volumes about their worldview and how they saw their place in the grand scheme of things.
And I think that idea is really captured in a quote from the article. It's from Vilnius Archbishop Gintaras Grušas. He called these items priceless historical treasures, symbols of Lithuanian statehood, magnificent works of goldsmithing and jewelry.
That quote really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because it highlights the idea that these objects are more than just gold and jewels.
You're right.
They represent something much bigger.
Yeah.
They're tangible links to the past, to the history and identity of Lithuania.
That makes me think about what you mentioned earlier about material culture. Can you remind us what that is?
Sure. So material culture is this idea that everyday objects can reflect a society's values and beliefs.
Right.
And in this case, these crowns weren't just decorative, they were statements.
Statements about
About the power of the state,
okay.
about the enduring legacy of its rulers.
And the location of this discovery adds another layer to this, right?
Oh, absolutely. Vilnius Cathedral isn't just any church.
It's significant.
Well, it's described as the necropolis of the elite of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania.
So like a final resting place for some of the most important figures in Lithuanian history.
Exactly.
So finding these artifacts there, it just connects them even more deeply to the history of Lithuania.
Right. And it's not just about the grand narrative of the state either.
What do you mean?
Well, there's a quote in the article from Rita Polikovichiti, who's a heritage specialist, and she said that these objects are important both for the state and for each of us.
Okay.
As signs of European identity, as a reclaimed identity of the old state, as a sign of the strength of our roots.
And that's a pretty powerful statement.
It is, especially when you consider Lithuania's complex history.
What do you mean by that?
Well, they've experienced shifting borders, occupations, the struggle for independence.
Right.
So these artifacts, they serve as a tangible link to a shared past.
A past that's been through a lot.
Exactly. And I think for many Lithuanians, they're a source of pride and identity.
So these treasures aren't just beautiful objects. They're symbols of resilience and continuity.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it's amazing to think that they survived all that turmoil and now they can connect people back to their heritage.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And the best part is that they're going to be restored and put on public display.
I know. Isn't that great?
Imagine being able to see them in person.
It's going to be an incredible opportunity for people to experience history firsthand.
Not just through textbooks or lectures, but through these tangible objects.
Yeah. They offer us a glimpse into a different world.
And they prompt us to think about the past in new and exciting ways.
Exactly.
So for everyone listening, what does all this mean?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that these treasures are much more than just glittering objects.
Yeah.
They offer us a window into a fascinating period of European history, and they raise questions about how we value and interpret the past.
They remind us that history isn't just about dates and names. It's about the stories of real people.
Yeah, their beliefs, their struggles, their triumphs.
And their legacies.
Exactly.
And on that note, I have one final thought for you. Imagine you're standing in Vilnius Cathedral, face to face with these royal treasures.
Okay.
What do they represent to you? Do you see them as symbols of power, of artistry, of faith, of a shared past?
That's a really good question.
Or maybe something else entirely,
Yep.
something we're thinking about.
Yeah, it really is.
It's amazing what these kinds of discoveries can do.
Yeah,
They can spark our curiosity and make us want to learn more about the world around us.
I completely agree. And sometimes the most unexpected places can hold the most fascinating stories.
Absolutely.
So the next time you see something that seems ordinary, take a closer look.
Yeah, you never know what secrets it might be hiding.